thing. The whole cooking experience is rather relaxing amidst all of this chaos. So thank you.
I'm so glad.
Yeah. All right. We've still got another like 5 minutes, 4 minutes. So people can, if you have your last things together, your Gloria's got her cup of coffee. If anyone else needs to get theirs.
Cup of tea, but you're close.
Yeah, if you're going to cook along, you could actually start slicing onions and dicing vegetables. I probably should have put that in my ingredient list, that it's the 3 onions we're gonna thinly slice. So you could, Jessica, I think you like to cook along, right?
I do.
Okay, yeah, so that would be a good thing.
Okay, I'll start with that.
Yeah.
What should I put the oven on?
325.
How long am I cooking it for?
At least 3 hours, could be 4.
Oh, okay.
Well, you know, where do you have to be? You know what? I'm gonna actually paste the recipe itself into the chat instead of just the ingredients. Give me 1 second here. No, I just wanted to put it so I know it. Let's see. Sorry. Close up of me. Hold on 1 second. Where did I put that?
Okay.
Dun, 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 dun. Hi, Alice Krause. Welcome on.
Hi.
Nice to see you. Are you outdoors or no? Oh, no, I see. It's just nice.
No,
windows
I'm
out.
inside.
Oh. For a second, I couldn't
Jessica,
tell.
do you see that I just put the recipe up there so it's got the ingredient prep listed?
If I don't have so any oven safe baking dish, but you want it covered.
Yeah, but you could use foil. I mean, if you
Okay,
want.
so I have one of those
9 by
big
30.
like ceramic-y kind of things with the glass.
Sure, you could use a Pyrex with foil. I'm going to use this.
Okay.
Yeah, that works too. But really, anything oven safe that will fit the piece of meat that you can cover, and it could be foil or whatever.
Okay.
Jessica, do your boys eat the brisket? Is this their favorite?
So. I mean, I make the same one every year. This is very different than what I make, so I'm excited to make this. But you know, they'll complain and then eat. You know, 3 or 4 meals worth.
That sounds like your boys. Yes.
Yeah.
How do you usually make your brisket?
I just put the recipe away because I'm doing it this way. But it's a lot of onions, some tomato paste, ketchup, like all thrown into like a pot. It's actually very good. It's very tasty. I slow cook it. But that's the only one I've been making for years. So yeah, I'm excited to try this.
Yeah, it sounds good.
And it's nice to only have to cook it for 4 people.
Right, I know.
And I don't even have a brisket.
Oh, okay. Well, you can make leftovers for the week, Jessica. Is Jessica the only one of us besides Suzy who is live cooking this as we do this? So we'll go at your speed then, Jessica. Good.
Woo, and I'm slow.
Okay. Awesome.
Unless you want me to stick you in this Dutch oven and put you in braise you for 3 hours.
Okay, we have some others coming on now. Welcome, Michelle.
Hi.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi. I'm so excited for this.
Good. Are you cooking along, Michelle?
I wasn't sure if I was cooking along or if I was supposed to take notes.
you could do it either way.
All right, is this being recorded?
It is.
Okay, so I'm gonna take notes and then maybe re-watch you when I do it maybe later.
That works too.
All right. So I think we're of the time now. So I want to happily turn it over and thank you, Suzy, once again for your expertise and your time.
Sure.
And everything that you've taught us so far has come out so well. And really excited to see how we make the ultimate foolproof brisket for Passover. So without further ado, we turn it over to Suzy. And I see one other thing that for those of you who are in homes with other people, you may want to consider muting yourself on this. That way, there's no other background noise. I'm going to mute myself as well. And if you have any questions, you can unmute to ask the question, or you can just type it into the chat box. Okay? Thank you, Suzy. Take it away.
Okay, and I am in a home with other people, so you may hear background noise, and that's just how it is going nowadays. So apologies in advance. So I want to just, let's see, I'm going to go through the ingredients, but first I'll just tell you that this recipe it's actually a very simple recipe, and the technique that we're using is a braise. So the reality is that you could apply these ingredients and this cooking method to lots of different roasts. It doesn't have to be this particular cut of meat. It doesn't have to be a brisket. And a braise basically means that you're cooking something slowly at a low temperature in a little bit of liquid. That's the definition of a braise, and that's what most brisket recipes that aren't like barbecue brisket usually are a braise. So the way that we do a braise is the first thing that we'll do is brown our meat, and then it's going to go from a large skillet, which I'll show you, into, I have a Dutch oven that I'm going to use to cook it in the oven, and it goes in at 325. So if you're cooking along and you want to preheat your oven, 325 is where you're going to go. And I will talk you through the ingredients before we begin. So I have here 3 onions that I sliced thin. I will define this as thin. You could go thinner than that if you wanted to, but it's going to cook for a long time, so they're going to get translucent and really, really soft. I have 1 clove of garlic that I just cut in half, and you leave that in whole, and 1 lucky customer ends up getting, or 2 actually, end up getting little treasures in their brisket. I have a pound of carrots that you can slice thin into rounds. I happened to have already prepped my carrots for snacking in the fridge, so I took carrot sticks and just cut them into little chunks like this, but it sort of doesn't matter. You just want them relatively small pieces, probably about a quarter inch, half inch in width. I've got 2 ribs of celery that I diced. The recipe that I gave you, I think, calls for canned diced tomatoes, a 14.5 ounce can. I couldn't get diced tomatoes, so I'm using crushed tomatoes. It will work either way. You could also use a can of whole plum tomatoes and just crush them up with your hands. But about 14 ounces of some sort of canned tomato product is what you want to put in here. I have 2 cups of red wine. And all that I will say about the wine is it doesn't really matter what kind of red wine. Just please make sure it is something that you would enjoy drinking. If you're putting in wine that doesn't taste good to you in a glass, it's not really going to taste that great to you in a braise. So anything, but it doesn't have to be, one of the nice things about this is it works with wine that you opened earlier in the week and you may or may not still be interested in drinking that wine aside. I've got salt and pepper, about 2 teaspoons of salt. We want to really, really generously brisket, and then I've got some dried herbs. You could use fresh or dried. I think I gave you quantities in the recipe for using fresh herbs, but I'm using dried. So I've got a teaspoon of dried rosemary, a teaspoon of dried thyme, and 1 bay leaf. And then we've got the star of the show. My brisket is a little bit under 5 pounds. I think it was 4.8. And that's what we've got for ingredients. Does anybody have any questions about the ingredients before I move on? No? Good. Okay. So I'm going to try to move my laptop around so I can show you what I'm doing. And no judgment if you actually get to see the messy parts of my house. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is, as I said, really generously season my brisket. And while I'm doing that, actually, I'm going to turn on heat underneath I've got a cast iron skillet with about a tablespoon of olive oil in it. And I want to get that nice and hot. So one tip I will show you when we're seasoning something to get a nice, even I think if you were in my challah class, I mentioned, I'm holding my hand up relatively high over this brisket and sprinkling. And that way you make sure you really evenly are covering the surface area instead of getting like tiny little piles of salt all over. So you want to nice and even on both sides. So I'm going to turn my brisket over. I'm going to season the other side. And this is going to look like a lot of salt, but just remember it's a really big piece of meat. So we want to make sure that it is really nice and flavorful. And this is the only time at this point that we're salting this dish. You can always taste for salt at the end, but this is where we're seasoning. So you want to make sure you're being nice and generous. Okay, so now we're going to, Jessica, how are you doing? Oh, if you have questions along the way, feel free to, yes, type them in the chat box. Okay, so let's see. Can you see my pan? Oh yeah, you can. Okay, great. So we're gonna go fat side down. So on a brisket, it's very easy to see the fat side. This is the fat side, the white, and it's gonna go right into my pan, which was not quite hot enough. You should hear a sear. Now you're looking at this and saying, wait a minute, that does not fit in her pan. This is fine. Okay, you're gonna just sort of make it fit, and we're gonna flip it over. So it's gonna go for a few minutes, and all we're looking for is some nice browning. So we wanna render the fat a little bit, and we wanna get it nice and brown.
Suzy, we have two quick questions. What if you don't have a cast iron pan, and how high should the heat be on the pan?
So the heat should be, hang on just one second. I'm just gonna go wash my hands so I can touch my computer again. Okay, so it definitely does not have to be a cast iron skillet. Any large skillet that will fit your piece of brisket is fine. And the other thing I will tell you is if your brisket doesn't fit in the pan, there's no reason why you can't cut it and brown it in two pieces. That will totally work just fine. And I'm sorry, what was the other question? How high? Really high. As high and hot as you can get the pan. All right, so I would say, I mean, it's gonna go for a few minutes. So while we're browning over here, we're gonna come back over here, and the skillet is actually not the pan that we're gonna cook in. A lot of times when we do a braise, and you could, I mean, I think in this case, the best way to do it is to have one skillet where you're browning it and then have your, yes.
How long are we browning on each side?
It sort of depends. It kind of depends on what you're cooking it in and how high your stove gets. But I would say it's probably about 4 minutes per side.
Would you rather do it on the laptop, Joe?
Sorry? Did someone ask a question? Okay. So then we've got our, I'm sorry. I thought I heard a question. Sorry. So this is the dish, this is the pan that I'm going to be cooking in. So while we're browning over there, what you want to do is load your onions into the bottom of whatever is going to go into the oven. Okay. And then my 2 pieces of garlic, just throw them in there. That's what we've got happening. And then once our meat is browned, that's going to go on top of this bed of onions and garlic. So we're going to have our browned meat. It's going to come off of the stove. We're going to shove it in here, make it fit. And then the rest of our ingredients are going to go on top. So I'm going to bring you over. We're going to just take a look at what our brisket looks like. It's started to brown yet. So you can see it's getting there. I want a little bit more color on there, just because color is flavor, and we want really great flavor. How do we get the actual recipe beyond the ingredients? Yep. There it is. I can also post it on Instagram. I think I'm Suzy _Scherr, SCHERR on Instagram, and I'll put it up there. All right, so can everybody see how it's beginning to brown? I like how we're looking here. We're getting close.
Isn't this okay like that? Lean back.
All right, so I'm gonna.
Is there any oil in the Dutch oven under the onions and garlic?
No. All right, so I flipped my brisket. All right, so now I've got I'm gonna move away just because of the noise. So now I've got it, I flipped it. You could let it brown a little more. Mine's gonna taste just fine, but in the interest of time, so we're not standing around waiting for my brisket to brown, I'm just gonna move it onto the other side. But you want a nice brown crust. So once we're browned on both sides, as I mentioned, it's gonna move into the Dutch oven. On top of the brisket, we're gonna dump. It's really, I mean, at this point, we're literally just dumping ingredients. So we've got the tomatoes, the wine, the diced celery, the diced carrots, and our herbs. And that's gonna go into a 325-degree oven for at least 3 hours. 3 hours is the point at which you're going to start to check your brisket. You want to be basting it every so often with pan juices. What you're looking for is like crazy, crazy tender, like pull it apart with a fork sort of meat. So if it's not done after 3 hours, it's just going to keep going and you're going to keep checking it. Some meat, really lean meat, you cook and cook and cook, and it'll eventually become tough. This brisket does have a lot of connective tissue, and as that connective tissue breaks down, it becomes more and more tender. This is the reason why the longer we cook it, the more tender it becomes. Does anybody have any questions at this point?
Yeah, Suzy, somebody asked you if you have to put oil in with the onions, and
You do not.
you do not.
No. This is going to produce enough fat and enough liquid that it's going to be just fine in the pan.
It'll absorb the fat from the thing. Okay.
All right, so I'm going to peek at I'm going to bring my Dutch oven over here.
Thank you. Good.
I'm going to peek at my brisket and see how the browning is coming. But as you can see, it doesn't take too terribly long. I mean, in the scheme of things.
Suzy, we have a question of what cut of brisket works best.
What kind of brisket?
What cut?
Oh, what cut? Oh, so this will work with any cut of brisket. I'm trying to remember what I have here, to be honest. I think it's first cut. But this works. And as I said, this recipe works with other kinds of roasts as well. So it doesn't even have to be brisket. All right, here I go. Ready? I'm going to move. Okay, and when you put it in the
Dutch oven or whatever you're cooking it in, it's going to go fat side up, which is where we are anyway because we browned it fat side down. So now we're on our second side. All right. I'll take a little more. Okay. All right, we're in good shape. I'm going to bring you for a ride again. Here we go, back over to my counter. So now you can see I've got, I made it fit. I shoved it in, tucked it under. So now we've got our browned brisket in the Dutch oven. And on top go our tomatoes. Okay. Our carrots. Our celery. Okay. Our herbs, which is thyme, rosemary, and 1 bay leaf. Sort of tuck in there. And 2 cups of red wine. Okay, and then you put a lid on it. And this is going into a 325-degree oven where you may have to move your racks around it, as I do, because I forgot. But you want it in the middle of the oven. And that's it, done. So I'll be checking mine in about 3 hours. And my guess is that it's probably gonna go closer to 3.5, 4 before it's ready, but 3 hours is when I'm gonna check it. And that's it, that's brisket, friends.
So how do you know when it's done?
So you're looking for it to be really tender. So you're going to take a fork, and if the fork goes in really easily and it can sort of pull apart some of the meat, then it's done. And what you're going to want to do is, it's a good thing if you're making it today and you're saving it for your Seder, it's great because it's always better the next day. What I would recommend doing is letting it cool enough so that you can handle it, slicing it today or tomorrow morning when it's cold is even easier. And then reheating it sliced in the juices.
We had a question, is it best to make it in advance to chill and get rid of the fat?
I mean, a cardiologist would answer this question differently than I would.
That's like asking a baker how to tunnel out the bagel. But seriously, question for you is when you slice it, does that take away any of the tenderness or any of the juiciness by slicing it days before Seder?
No, it does not.